All right, I think we're live. Yeah, so this one's gonna be tough. I'm coming at you today to honor a good friend of mine, Loren Morrison, who's passed away, Lomo. And so this is for you. I sat down with three MCs from Eugene to honor you and talk about your art. And so we're gonna miss you, bud. So I'm just gonna get to those three interviews. Lomo was a good friend of mine for many years, an absolute beast on a microphone and was just an incredible lyricist. Like many good artists, he was also dealt a very difficult hand early in life. Early adulthood, there were many struggles, including mental health. Though he was able to function in society and get by, he found it very difficult to stay consistent for too long. Recording and performing live hip hop shows was his passion, and it took him all around the neighboring states and beyond, but with it came a lifestyle of partying. I don't know details of what happened, but I do know he will be missed by many. The imprint he left on the Eugene hip hop community is massive. Lomo was the epitome of a DIY artist. He hustled with the best of them, selling CDs out of his backpack and spitting ciphers in any venue, stage, smoking section, or back alley he could find. But he was more than just a rapper. He was a charmer who was always trying to get you to smile. He was a friend to so many, and these past few days, the outpouring of love on social media among those close to him show the impact that he has left on all of us. I sat down with three Eugene MCs individually to hear stories they wanted to share about Lomo and hopefully give you a glimpse of just who he was. My first guest is Rio, MC name Imperfect. Welcome, Rio, to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I wish it was under better circumstances.
Yeah, this is a somber tone. You and I have been friends for many, many years, and basically Lomo's in all of it, in our friendship.
Yeah.
Behind you, you got a t-shirt from one of our defunct hip-hop crews, Critical Masters. There he is. Yeah, but first of all, thank you so much, Lomo, or Rio. This is really awesome. You're up in Washington now?
Yeah, Vancouver.
So first of all, just when you heard the news about Lomo, tell me what was going through your head.
Ooh, man. Yeah, I heard on Tuesday morning, and I didn't really believe it. I mean, I think that's kind of often what's the case, right? Is you hear something like that and you don't believe it. I mean, we're around the same age, and he was just one of those people that always seemed kind of indestructible, like just strong person mentally and physically. And so like it was really hard to process. And I started work for a little bit, but then I was like, I can't do this. Like I was not functioning well. So I just took the rest of the day off, and I was like, man, Lomo would be writing right now. So I just started writing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just something that was really difficult to believe, really difficult to process. And it had been a long time since I had spoken to him. So it was even more difficult, just like kind of thinking about all the times we had together, like all the stuff we did together, we lived together.
Yeah. So listening, you and I back in the day, we were recording on our home studios. We had Acid Pro, and we had our little makeshift mixers and our shitty mics, and we would record hip hop songs. And I think the way that you and I met was because of you doing poetry, live poetry, and Molly, a good friend of ours, connected us and was like, "Hey, I got a friend that does these live recordings. You should hook up with them." A couple weeks before that, Lomo was walking down the road, and I see him, and I'd known him for years, and I see him, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, I told him, I'm like, "Man, I've been making a bunch of music." He's like, "Really? I've been writing a lot." And so we had just connected, and then we connected with you guys, and it all kind of came together really quick, where we had like 16 to 18 of us recording music.
Yeah, our first show, me and Red, that first show we did, Parallel Minds, was with Lomo and you.
Yeah.
At the Black Forest.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that the other day. I forgot all about that. But yeah, Lomo was at my first show.
Yeah. So, he's a long time, and these shows, we did a lot of free shows, but this was kind of the hip hop scene at the time. There was a lot of people doing stuff, but we were definitely a big part of it, and just doing these fun shows. And Lomo, I always had a hard time being a hip hop head. Lomo is hip hop. Like he's all about it. He was so into it. And so, yeah, talk about the hip hop house. What was going on at that house? This is like on within Willamette or something back 2004, 5. Was it more like 2007?
Oh my goodness. So
talk about the hip hop house.
Yeah, it probably would have been 2007-ish. That sounds about right. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, Lomo, like it was me, Red, and Lomo who lived in the house at that time. When I mean, it started, I think Sly was living with us first, and then Lomo moved in after Sly. But basically, we had 3 studios in the house, so each of us had our own home studio, and we got Critical Masters together. There was 8 of us in Critical Masters, and literally, like, if it wasn't like when Sly was there, Sly would start making a beat, and then he'd probably have the hook and chorus recorded already, and then we'd all start getting on it. It was the same thing with Lomo. He would be getting on something, he'd be working on a beat. So it was like, I mean, there were nights we did like 4 or 5 songs in a night. Like, it was just crazy. Like, I would get up in the morning to go to work. I'd grab my bike and I'd have to step over Emcees, like tiptoe around them to not step on them in the living room just to get out of the house.
Yeah.
But yeah, we made a lot of music.
A lot. And like you said, 3 studios in one house in every room. And so it's like, dude, at any given moment, you could all be recording a separate song. And so
yeah,
that was a wild time. Talk about what kind of MC he was. I mean, Lomo was an aggressive rapper. Like he had different styles, actually. That's the beauty of it. He had slow, fun stuff, but he also had that just gritty, like real, like felt pain kind of music. But talk about kind of the influence that you saw from the art that he put out.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest influence is really like I mean, everything about him was skilled. Like, his delivery was skilled. His wordplay was skilled. Like, he was good at everything he did, like singing, when he did some singing stuff. But what I really enjoyed about him the most is just how much he made music.
Yeah,
because I'm so ADHD. Like, I'm constantly like trying to make music, and I don't know if I had that before, or if that's something that I learned from him, because he was such a big influence. Because living in that house, like when Critical Masters was together and we were doing like a ton of stuff all the time, we were just making crazy amounts of music. But even when that wasn't going on, me and Lomo would just make songs all the time. And it's interesting because he did have like kind of a very like aggressive style at times, but he also, like you said, he had the funny stuff. But me and him made a bunch of like really emotional stuff. Like, we made a lot of songs about girls and stuff like that, and like, which was a kind of a different side of him that I got to see. And I don't think a lot of it was stuff he even wanted to release. He was like, oh no, I'm probably not going to release that. I've probably hopefully got some old stuff on my old computer that I have to dig through. But yeah, just the passion he had for music was really inspiring to me. The drive he had. I think I had a line on my first album where I was like, I'm trying to be more like Lomo Sapien, more driven, holding mics like without him I feel naked. And that was how he was. Like, you didn't see Lomo not rapping. Like, if you saw him, if he wasn't freestyling, he was recording. Yeah. And he was just always had hip hop on his mind, and it was just like really fun to be around.
Yeah. And then, I mean, rapping out of a van, selling CDs out of a van. So
he lived his dream. Like, that was so inspiring to me. See him like, oh, I'm going on tour, and he just bought this van, and then him and Ace all just did it. It was sick.
Yeah, they just made it happen, and they did a bunch of shows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before I move on to the next guest, I want to talk about some of the somber stuff. I mean, Lomo had a lot of struggles, and this is no secret. I talk about it on the podcast that when you and I met, I was struggling a lot with alcoholism, and our whole circle was partying, except for you. Like, you were the only person, and actually Lomo was. This is the interesting thing, that you guys both were pretty sober, and
yeah.
You were always completely sober. He just wasn't your bag ever. And Lomo, he was a late bloomer when it came to really like to sedatives,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what happened. And I want to be clear when I say that. Like, we don't know what happened to Lomo. I don't know the details yet.
Yeah.
And to me, it doesn't necessarily matter, because we're going to miss him regardless of what happened. It's going to be our pain to be there. So, but what I want to, I want to talk about how I kind of want to talk about how bad it got, that Lomo struggled deeply with mental health issues. And we're telling stories about the really awesome, fun, youthful times where we were making music and doing cool stuff. But unfortunately, I mean, I could tell some personal stories that I won't, but I mean, he lived with my brother at a time. We've all struggled and bounced around in different things. But I mean, at the end, like you and I both had crossed paths with him, like out front of Albertsons asking for money. And this is why this is so heartbreaking, because you had told me, and I hope it's okay that I share this, but you had told me that when we talked about this, when I first talked to you about this, that you felt guilty, and I felt the same way, that you're like, why couldn't we have helped him more? And it's so difficult now that these conversations about mental health are happening. And what did I say to you? I said, you can't do that. You can't beat yourself up. Like you can't, because if we could have helped him, we would have. And in some ways we thought we were helping him by, some tough love sometimes. And it's just, like when you lose somebody to mental health issues, it's so tough. I don't even know where my question's at in this, but I just wanted you to talk about, seeing him, and there's all the good times and how we grew apart and how much that's been painful. Like just the reality of life. I just want to hear what
Yeah. And I don't really know, like, really how we grew apart. Like, I mean, he went on tour and he moved out. He's like, I'm going on tour. I don't know when I'm coming back, so I can't pay rent anymore. And I was like, okay, that's sick. But, so we had to get a roommate, but I don't know where we kind of lost touch. I think it was that, I don't know how long he was touring for, to be honest. But I do remember seeing him at that Albertsons, and yeah, it was tough seeing him in the state that he was in, and it was like I was happy to see him, but I was also really, really sad about it as well. And so yeah, there is a lot of guilt that, like, and I mean, I was young at the time. I was making no money, so I don't know what I could have even have done. But
yeah, we didn't have any means to help each other. We could barely help ourselves. And I don't know. I mean, I know how I grew apart. My distance from you guys was I had a girlfriend that was kind of controlling, and I just was drinking too much, and I was embarrassing myself, and I just kind of distanced myself. There was this just kind of, we all were just crushing it, and something was brewing, and then it just got too much. Like there was too much chaos and too long a nights, and I don't know. I honestly was shocked when I had heard kind of the decline with him, because it shocked me, because he, like I said, he never got into that side of partying. He was always just right. He was always making music. But I don't know. Regardless of that stuff, it's I think in the long run, 20 years from now, when we look back at this, hopefully we get to, and we're gonna remember his excitement, his energy, his
passion,
and that
his enthusiasm too. Like, it was something I loved about Lomo. Like, and this is something that was really impressive to me, is like, he was the coolest dude. Like, you always knew the girls liked him. You always knew the rappers liked him. Like, everyone liked him, but he still was so good at making you feel really good about yourself. Like, he was so encouraging. And it's like, usually that kind of person who has that much going for them is not that way. They're not trying to lift other people up. I don't know. I've felt a lot of times in the past, but he was always like to have that guy who I had so much respect for. And like, I mean, I lived with him. I saw him every day, but he was always like trying to pump me up and lift me up and like tell me how good a new verse was, or like when I would accidentally forget a song and happen to freestyle, which everyone knew I didn't do well. Like, I was intimidated freestyling because of him, because I was living with this guy who was like one of the best freestylers I'd ever known. Sure. And he would say some of the sickest stuff just like off the top. And I was like, man, I can never get that good. I was intimidated by it. Yeah. But like, I would miss a lyric at a show and end up freestyling like 4 bars, 8 bars, whatever it would be. And he'd be the one at the end, like, man, Rio, that was really sick the way you said that. That was like, he knew my lyrics, which was also really touching to me, because a lot of people listen, but they don't necessarily know your music. But he always knew my lyrics, and he'd be like, oh, when you messed that up, but then you went into the freestyle, that was super sick. Yeah. So yeah, he pumped you up, man. Like, he always got you excited about whatever we were doing.
If you can live with somebody in your 20s and then still afterwards say something positive about them, that's pretty telling. That's pretty telling how important they are. because roommate situation in your 20s, that makes or breaks a friend.
Yeah.
It's tough. Those were tough times.
Well, and that hip hop house was kind of a crazy place to live. Like it was.
Yeah, I felt like I got staph infection just sitting on the couch.
And Lomo was always trying to like keep it clean and tidy, but like he would clean up and then like 6 MCs would come over.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was nothing you could do.
Well, Rio, Imperfect, MPRFCT. You and I have been working on tracks behind the scenes. We just put out one called Some Things. You can listen to that. Patty Rose featuring Imperfect. It's on Spotify. Rio,
Yeah.
I love you, man. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to move on to the next guest, but props to Lomo.
Yeah, definitely. Rest in peace, and love you too. And it's been kind of cool just seeing how much Lomo's brought people together. Like in his passing, like I've talked to people I haven't talked to in 11, 12 years, just like to connect. So yeah, it's sad, but I mean, he's always kind of bringing people together like he always was.
Yeah. My guest is the owner operator of the Big Dirty, KI. KI, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So this is on a somber tone. I wanted to reach out to you and ask you if you would do this because I know that you and Lomo spent a lot of time on the stage together, put together shows. First and foremost, was it a monthly or a weekly show called Overflow? Talk about Overflow a little bit.
Yeah, so every Sunday for about 3 years, we would do a freestyle cipher at the Samurai Duck, which is no longer. Lomo and I had taken over that show after Albert and MacNut did stop doing it. So they put it together. We would always go there and freestyle, and then they put us in charge of it moving forward for consecutive years.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun because anybody was welcome to get on the mic. And I mean, there was a lot. Don't get me wrong, there was a ton of talented people, but there was a lot of people like me that were able to come and get on a mic that were not so qualified.
You were always good, man. You always bash yourself. You were interesting. You did good stuff.
I was drinking the obstacles, but anyway, so yeah, I mean, the history with Lomo is interesting because I met Uncle Nancy at the Black Forest. He was performing like an industrial show, like it was like 9 Inch Nails. Like he had 2 microphones and he's like, just weird stuff. And afterwards, I'm like, hey man, let me spit something I wrote. And I had never done any hip hop really, but I wrote this reggae song, so I spit it for him, and he was like, yeah, dude, come over and record that. And then that weekend, me, him, and then Billy D was there when I showed up. And we just recorded this like album that weekend, and that was when it was kind of new to be able to do that, like have that technology, in our just on a computer. And then that was right before I saw Rio walking down Lomo walking down the street, and it was just within like a couple year period that it just boom, all of a sudden we're all making music. It started with 3 Blind Mics, like you said, Albert and MacNut, but the original crew was 3 Blind Mics with Joel Bowie, Albert and Alex England, and Steve Jackson, Core One, and so and it's wild. But Lomo's at the beginning of all of it, and I wanted to just kind of, I don't know, have some people from the hip hop community, because I know as the operator and owner of the Big Dirty, you're still doing hip hop shows. You've kind of, been at that for how many years have you been doing that now?
Well, I started like rapping and writing and stuff when I was like 14, 15 in California, but I moved here in 2008. And how I met all of you guys was when it was Critical Masters of the Universe.
Yep.
I was working at Dairy Queen. I was 19 years old, and a commercial came on like K-Duck or something, and it was like Hip Hop Olympics. There's going to be a crump dancing battle and an MC battle. And I went there. My buddies paid for me to get in and got me on it. And then that's how I met like Average Joe and even Cerebral and Insight and Undermine, who I ended up getting in a group with. And after doing that battle, I went to a party and I met Lomo at that party. And he just told me, he was like, "Oh, you're the kid from that battle." And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I don't battle because I'll just punch you in the face." And I was like, "Thank you for the self-awareness. I appreciate you not doing that." And of course, he was hustling CDs at the house party, and then turned into a freestyle cipher. We ended up really hitting it off, and every cipher that happened with us in it ended with he and I, the last two.
Oh yeah, he was relentless.
Drunk most times. Yeah.
I already talked to Rio. One of the things that Rio spotlighted about Lomo was that he was just relentless. Like you saw him rapping more than talking. Literally. Like, I mean, he would be rapping his order at McDonald's. And so it was impressive.
He definitely lived it and breathed it for his the majority of his late 20s, early 30s.
I mean, when you guys were doing so again, it was monthly or it was weekly? It was weekly. It was Sunday.
Weekly.
Yeah. How are you? I mean, so most of the content was literally just original content, right? I mean, at that point.
Yeah. Like 99% of it. We started incorporating like local MCs that would do a set, and then we would go into the freestyle thing, and we would do games like trying not to rhyme, compliment battles. So George, who was the bartender, and Dano, who's from the Athearchus, were always there. And it's funny because when we first got it, it was a bunch of metalheads, and they did not like us doing a hip hop event there. And then they went there and they saw, and then they saw it wasn't like it's indie hip hop. It's not fucking TI or whatever, So we kind of bridged that gap, and then the Athearchus started joining it, and George would just pour us pictures of PBR, and we would just drink and freestyle from 9 till 2:30 a.m.
I remember it was chaos. I remember the last time I had you on the podcast, I told you that one of the people that were working there one day kicked me in the face. It was amazing.
Yeah.
The same way.
Yeah. The bathroom was a single stall, and the door wouldn't shut, and we would.
It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
But
I would sit on the toilet and keep the door shut with my foot.
And when we were young, and we came up in a time where you really had very little. I mean, as far as when you're 18, 19, 20, you have nothing. You have you probably don't have internet, even though it kind of started to exist a little bit better, but
I was going to the library for the internet.
Right. And that's where this whole story with Lomo kind of takes a turn. And we had talked off air that you said you were kind of willing to talk about it. It's tough. And I don't think it would be justice for Lomo to tell his story without telling the truth, without telling some of the darker side,
No, I agree. The dude was troubled. He had a hard life from start to finish. From start to finish, he always knew that and was aware of it and tried to fight against it. And he was also trying to
educate people on just the realities of mental health.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was trying to use his voice because of it, and I mean, one of my first memories of him was him acting a fool. He was 16, 17 and getting kicked out of a South Eugene football game for drinking beer. But it was so brazen because just like Lomo, he walked in with his beer in his hand. Like he didn't even hide it. He was like, why can't I have this? And
one of my favorite Lomo stories, if I may.
Yeah.
We did a show at John Henry's back in the day, the old John Henry, not the first John Henry's, but the second John Henry's. And after we're Lomo's sitting against the wall and he's rolling a blunt. This is probably 2010, and
so not legal. Yeah.
No, it's not legal. He's rolling a blunt. He's got his girlfriend with him. And there's just this guy kind of pacing back and forth out front, talking about how he owns an MMA gym and he could beat up anybody here. And he's just being really aggressive and annoying and loud and kind of just bumming everybody out. And I'll never forget, I was standing there and Lomo's rolling a blunt. And he's like, "Oh, yeah." And we're rolling a blunt. He's like, "After I finish rolling this blunt, I'm going to knock you out, And the guy's like, "Oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah." He rolls it, gets up. The guy fakes a punch. Lomo, pop, one punch. Guy's completely knocked out. He walks away and just smokes his blunt. It was one of the Billy Badass moments that I saw that was he didn't go overboard. He didn't start beating him while he was down. He just went solid and walked away.
And what you're saying, you're not, from what it sounds like, you're not condoning violence. It's that this guy was actually making the scene threatening, right? That's what it sounds like. Maybe not.
Well, you, I'm a fan of street justice. I'm not condoning it, but like at a time when, you know, he was gonna assault somebody.
That's what I mean. I remember those days, and I remember the way that people would people talk about it now, like in Eugene, they're like, "Oh no, people are way more aggressive." It's just not true. People have always been aggressive. There was a tone with a lot of the people that were playing by the rules that was more respectful back in the day. It seems like more connected.
I would say that it's the exact same. There's just there's more cameras now, so you see it more.
Yeah, there were still feral situations going on.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know, I'm gonna play a song at the end of the show, and it's called "You're So Ugly" by Lomo, and you've heard this track, and I want to hear your thoughts on this because Rio suggested it. I listened to it, and I'm like, whoa, dude, like it's a lot, you know. It's really dark, and that's why I want to talk about it ahead of time. It's like, but I think it really shows what was kind of going on in his head. I mean, some heavy stuff. It's abstract and it's art.
Going on in a lot of people's head and lives, and music and art is made to make you feel uncomfortable. And if there's one thing that Lomo could do with his music, it's make you feel uncomfortable, because it always had really dark undertones. It was always very moody and angsty and brooding, and he was kind of that way.
And I don't want to take away from any individual's art creative style, right? But I want to say that Uncle Nancy, who now goes by Joey Helpish, he's kind of the pioneer in our circle of that, because he brought that industrial, like 9 Inch Nails, kind of like, you know what, be angry, like almost Linkin Parkish. I know it's cheesy, but like for people will understand what I mean if I say that.
It's ominous sounding.
I'm hurting, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, now we've got guys like Lil Peep, and unfortunately, it's like a similar fate, you know, with these. But there's a sadness that goes in there, and I related to it, you know. And I don't care to say it, because I know some people will listen to this, and that's why I'm doing this, is because some people need to understand that there's different realities for people, and for some, it just is a reality of having nothing. The only thing that Lomo really, really cared about, but the only thing he ever had, was his passion for his music.
Yeah,
you know,
and his friends. He was really friend oriented. You know, like him and Mike D were inseparable, and you know. Right.
And I haven't talked to
Cruz.
Asol is who you're talking about. Asol and him they toured together. That was his homie. And I want to give a shout out to Asol. First of all, Asol and I have the same birthday. Right. So every year we celebrate that together. So I mean, we're definitely different circles, but we always, when we'd be out and about, we always remembered that. But
I mean, the Eugene hip hop scene, even though it was like there were like different cliques, it was always very small. So regardless of whether we were like interacting and commingling every day, every week we were commingling, because at that point we would all go to shows, we would all support each other's shows, we would all, you know, contribute to the scene at that point.
I mean, that whole vibe is the whole reason I started this podcast. That's the reason that I jumped to do this, because, and hip hop artists, why? Is because my Spent the Rent started as a hip hop label. You know, I mean, essentially, it was in my house. That's where everything was being recorded. And so and Lomo was at the very beginning of it. Lomo may have been, if I don't remember exactly, but Lomo and Sly Guy were the first two people that I was recording songs with, you know. I mean, outside of Uncle Nancy, like outside of how that started with the Antidote. But I mean, you know, when everybody talks about Acid Pro and stuff, that all started in my living room at 17th and Polk, you know, and Eugene. So it's pretty fun stuff. But anyway,
the hip hop house, man, that place had to get destroyed after what those guys did.
We talked about the hip hop house when I talked to Rio, and we didn't mention that it was condemned. I mean, they
had to build a condo there, dude. Those guys.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was right on the corner of 24th and Willamette. And, you know, Eugene's just changed so much. But at that time, I mean, it was just the peak. It was South Eugene. We were just loving it. It was so much fun. But, hey, so you guys are doing something for Lomo. You guys are going to honor him. Unfortunately, I'm going to be in the UK. I'm going to be in England when you guys do this. So I'm going to miss it. Yeah. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of pictures and whatnot. Hopefully, you guys should try to record some live stuff if you can. Like if you have the setup to record like a live.
We actually we'll record the whole night.
That would be incredible. And then, you know, but I want to talk about that a little bit. So like I had said, you're the owner operator of the Big Dirty, which is downtown. Where's the address in downtown Eugene?
844 Olive Street.
It's like right in Bermuda. It's across the street from the Horsehead.
Yeah, it's
and
the
you've
old
been like
Rogue building.
right. And you guys have been adding some awesome stuff, like painting up the walls and stuff outside so that it looks it pops so much more. Some characters and stuff.
We're
so what do you have planned? What do you have planned for it's the memorial? It's the Lomo. Is that correct? Is what you're calling
the
it?
Memorial.
The Lomo is
going to be the Lomo Memorial.
Right, September 2nd. So, tell me about what that's all about.
So a lot of the old guys who are all married and have kids now and live in all other parts of the world, but like 2008 to 2016 were like living and breathing, trying to bring a hip hop scene here and bringing shows that would otherwise pass over and booking stuff like Lomo and ASOL and Eb1 and all these guys who are all kind of interconnected really through Lomo, which it's funny because a lot of these guys I haven't talked to in a while. And when they found about Lomo's passing, they'd reach out and they'd be like, he was like, it's the 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon or whatever. Like he's like an integral part in all of it. So like, I wouldn't know Eb, who was like my bandmate for years and my roommate, if we didn't do shows with Lomo, which he put me on at World Flavors. I don't know if you remember that place. It's kind of little cafe.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
I met Eb through that. So it's like we all kind of decided to come together and do some of our older music and reach out to the people that knew him and loved him and maybe lost contact with him over the rough patch before his passing and stuff. But so yeah, it's going to be like effectively an overflow show like we used to do at Samurai Duck, except we're going to do a couple of short sets and then we're just going to open up the mics, play beats and freestyle.
Yeah. And then,
and it's going to be free.
Which is amazing because that's kind of honoring, you had said that on Facebook, honoring the tradition of kind of the free show, that it's just open for everybody that wants to get up on a mic if you want and enjoy some individual kind of underground abstract hip hop. I mean, it's so unique, the stuff that we've done over the years. And I mean,
there's good, there's bad, there's ugly.
Oh, You guys also do some incredible stuff. I mean, you're going to be doing a show coming up too that I think it's this weekend with oh my gosh, with Primates.
The Primates,
right? Yeah. So that'll be, and that's at is it John Henry's or Blair?
No, it's actually at Blair Alley. Yeah.
Blair Alley Arcade
for the Whitaker Block Party.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, hey, KI, thank you so much. Everybody, check out the Big Dirty. It's a sweet venue. There's awesome shows going on, local music and touring music all the time. So check out the Big Dirty for that. KI,
if you knew Lomo or didn't know Lomo, come out September 2nd and pay some respects. If you have photos, send them to me on Facebook or Instagram of Lomo performance photos. Anything, we'd like to put them up on a slideshow.
Anything with Lomo, with Loren Morrison. Shout out to Lomo. I mean, this is all we're doing this. All right, joining us now from his car is the good friend Endr. Thank you so much. I know this is on a somber tone. I keep saying that, but it's so true. I really do appreciate you at least taking the time to sit down with me and talking about Lomo for a few minutes. So thanks a lot. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no thanks even needed, man. I appreciate you reaching out and being a voice, to send out some good vibes out of something that's obviously not fun to talk about.
I think why it was important to me to spotlight Lomo, because I mean, it's impossible to spotlight every single one of our friends that passes away because it's happening so frequently, and everywhere you look, there's people that we care about. The reason that I chose to do this is because this podcast was started on hip hop. It was Spent the Rent podcast. Spent the Rent Records was what I was all about.
Right.
And then branched out into community. That's what it was all about. So you being my first guest, I mean, there's so many reasons. There's so many reasons to do it. But anyway, Lomo. I mean, Lomo was such a huge part of the Eugene hip hop scene. I want to hear what you have to say about his presence in the community.
Man, Lomo is a staple in Eugene hip hop. And I would say, like, over the course of the last 10 to 20 years, as much criticism as I hear locals giving local hip hop in Eugene, the fact is that there is kind of a core group of Emcees that came up around the same era in the same time. And I'm honored to be considered a part of that group, and Lomo was one of the the rare MCs that I remember that you just couldn't forget what he did on a microphone and what he did as far as his energy. You know, he brought a certain charisma, stage presence, combined with his lyrical ability and songwriting. I just, as a performer, even in those days of being young and hungry and just, you know, just wanting my chance on a microphone and blah, 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 you know, just kind of having my selfish ego moments as a young MC, I remember looking at him and seeing what he did as far as his performances live and being like, man, this fucking guy has some shit. Like he has some shit. He has whatever that it factor is. And it was impressive to watch. And not only that, but like you could just tell so clearly his love for music and his love for what he did on that microphone and his love for emceeing and the art of it and his humor and being able to combine all of it. Like, so I'm humbled to say that I've done this long enough to see a bunch of types of MCs on a microphone, a bunch of types of rappers.
Right.
It's really rare that you catch somebody that can not only carry the mic well and conduct their business as far as their songs from song to song to song, but also to hold the crowd in between songs, which is the emceeing part, right? Which is the host ability, the microphone controller ability. And he had that innate talent where he could hold the crowd's attention, whether it be humor, whether it be like a real story that he was going through, or, you know, whatever it happened to be. And he was just somebody that I really hope that the young up and coming, you know, kind of local artists, and I know it's hard, right? Because that era, we weren't really in the smartphone era, you know, of things. But that also to me is why that kind of that pool of MCs in that era, that, like, I know you hear, like, you know, you hear old timers and people that have been doing this shit for a long time, and they always talk about their era and their time and how, you know, shit in back in my day and you know, and all this. And I hate to sound like that, but the reality is that I came up in a time where if you were on a stage and had a microphone in your hand, you better have talent. You better have talent. You better have skills. You better come with some shit, or you're getting booed. You might get beat the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just like, that's how it was. You know, you had a reputation to uphold as soon as you touched that microphone, and word would get out if you didn't, you know, and all these. And Lomo was one of those rare cats that on and off the microphone was just a good human to be around. His smile, he just, man, I choke up talking about it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, the semantics when you say like there's rappers and then there's hip hop artists and there's, you know what I mean, but like he did it all. Like you're talking like there's a situation where there's straight rappers, right? Where it's like we're not having any cupcakes in there, you know.
No, facts,
Lomo was cool in every setting. Like that's he can hang with the skaters, he can hang with the, you know. But you know, I remember one time, and this is a ridiculous comparison, but I literally remember I didn't have anyone to compare him to. And I'm thinking Tupac. Now, I'm not comparing him to Tupac, but hear me out. I just knowing someone personally that was a friend of mine that really I got him on the mic to record for the first time. You know,
so,
I mean, he was, but I got him on the mic the first time.
Cut out for a second. I don't know what happened, but
you're back. But he, you know, he just the way that it's so believable and so natural. You know what I mean? Like that's like I couldn't even think of anyone. I just, you know, I don't know, and it. You know, it's a big loss. And then, you know, I want to talk a little bit about the mental health stuff because, I mean, and addiction. You and I both have been very public about our experiences with, you know, substances, and then our sobriety and the hard work, and then dealing with the mental health, and like, you know, having to be able to turn it on and off, like what your access to the world is.
Of course,
it's really difficult. And you know, there's so many people that I know Lomo in different capacities, that there's interweave stories that it's just, you know, he lived with my brother for a bit, and that was at a low for both of them. And so it's so sad. There's just so much there, you know. And I just wanted to hear what you have to say about, like, you know, our community and what we can do for each other when it comes to mental health, because everybody's hurting. And you get asked this a lot, but we need the Endr pep talk.
No, man, no. The reality is that like the topic of addiction and mental health is one that we have to fucking talk about. We can't avoid, And I think the sad fact is that for anybody that has dealt with any kind of mental health issues, any trauma in their background, anything like that, we tend to, and I say we because I'm included in that shit. I got a lot of my own issues and background issues, and we tend to gravitate towards things that are band-aids, that are quick fixes, to cover up those feelings, and unfortunately, a lot of us get raised where we're taught that if you speak about these issues, that's weak, and you shouldn't fucking do that, and you should stuff it, and you should just carry on your business and just mind your own. And the problem with that is then it creates this kind of, I always compare it to like shaking a soda or shaking a champagne cork.
Yeah.
It's eventually gonna pop. It's eventually gonna crack, and then it creates grown men, grown women that are those bottles that we were as kids, and now we don't know how to uncork it. Now we don't know how to do those things because we were never taught those things as kids, or maybe we never felt safe enough that it was okay to twist that top a little bit and to let some steam off and to vent and communicate, And so when you combine, any kind of mental damage, any kind of emotional abuse, any kind of physical abuse, you combine all these things with the band-aid that unfortunately drugs and alcohol falsely provide and lie to us, tell us that that's going to be the fix. The problem is it just continues to bury those issues, and I talk a lot to newcomers in recovery, people that are just trying to get sober or whatever, and I have this I have this metaphor that was shared with me that basically it's like driving around with dead bodies in our trunk, and we can try and act like they're not there, and we can try to ignore them, or whatever, and we don't tell nobody about them, but every time we go through something in our life, they're going to bump around and we're going to feel them, and they're going to be there, and until we can face them, until we can deal with it, until I can reach out to somebody and ask for help to get rid of these fucking bodies, they're just going to stink up my fucking car,
Right.
like, and then everywhere I go, I'm going to reek of death, and everywhere I go, it's going to end up coming out like that. And it might feel easier to keep it locked away,
No, but
in the long term, they're just festering,
And I
whatever.
think also the people that someone comes to need to be trustworthy. We need to owe it to each other to be like, I'm not going to monopolize on this, because that's what happened. That's what happens. People are hurt, and so everybody's hearted because they're like, I opened up and then I got pounced,
Right.
because everybody's on the take. So
it takes a lot of fucking faith and vulnerability to step out, man, and
that's it.
like that's like, and understanding this, that like, I cut out again for a second, but I for years chameleoned myself for years, and whatever the crowd was and wherever I was, I would chameleon myself to fit in so that I didn't have to be myself, because if I was myself, then you would see my true pain and you would see all this darkness, and then maybe you would judge me, you would hurt me, you would hate me, you would this. And absolutely there was times and moments when I shared bits of information with somebody that wasn't prepared to properly deal with that, and maybe they dealt with it in an unhealthier way or whatever, and it did what to me? It made me shut the fuck down. But the problem is, we can't let that stop us from doing what's best for us. If a person in your life and my life or whatever, we share a bit of information for or with or something like that, and they handle it in our vision improperly, I can't shut down and then fuck myself up. You know what I mean? Like, I have to move on and continue and recognize that even though this person might not have been ready, there's going to be somebody else out there that feels what I'm feeling, that has been through what I've been through, that's walked through the fucking war, and he or she is going to walk through with me too, and understanding that, like, if I don't, because that's my whole thing that I constantly, because even sitting here, man, I've been clean and sober for a while, and I still struggle to pick up the fucking phone sometimes because my pride, my fear, my ego, my whatever, just wants to resist that. But here's the issue is when I do that, I isolate myself emotionally and spiritually from finding any kind of growth. And then I'm back up here in this fucked up head of mine. And like, my mind is the biggest liar I know. It's the great convincer. It will convince me of bullshit. And so if I can reach out and pick up, you know, my fucking phone that weighs a ton sometimes and hit somebody else out and just vent, communicate, get an outside perspective, get help. I think that's the biggest thing, is understanding that no matter how dark your position is in that moment, that if there's I tell people this all the time, and I remind myself, is if there's breath in our fucking lungs, there's an opportunity to change. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your mental health status is. I don't care if you're in fucking prison. I got friends in prison right now. I got friends in the state mental hospital right now. Like, if there's breath in your lungs, then there is a capability of change. It's whether or not we're willing to do these awkward, these uncomfortable things enough to get to that next fucking stage. And
well, what I worry about, because that's on the individual level, and then I think a lot of these fixes, because I think for a guy like Lomo, I think the truth is that the issues came before the drugs. That came mental health, and the challenge is there that he was getting help. The Birch program here in Eugene was helping him get in housing. He was doing really good, and it's not that this isn't an attack on him. What I'm saying is it's that everyone's giving it everything they got and still slipping. When you become a statistic, that means that enough people know that it's a problem that they're studying it. Right. So at that point, this is a big epidemic of this kind of stuff. And so this is why I do the show, because my stories are stories of the underrepresented. These are this person who was living on the streets, or maybe at the end was housed. I had lost touch because we grew apart. I still will always love him, always remember the positives, and will always cherish what he brought to this community. You know,
facts. I mean, the reality is that like who we are and who we are in addiction are two different people. It is that's the facts. Like, you know, and
absolutely,
you know, it's important and it's ugly, you know, to look at when we lose a friend or a family member to addiction or alcoholism or suicide, or, you know, it's like, it's hurtful to look at that because we just want to remember the good. We just want to remember these feelings of good, but it's so crucial. And that's why I really respect what you're doing right now to bring attention to like, what can we do for anyone else that's watching that might be in that position where they're, you know, they're going through it mentally, or they're going through it emotionally, or they're going through it with addiction and all this type of shit. Because like, what's something that I can't control? I can't control how much of this fucked up fentanyl shit is on our streets. I can't control that. But what I can control is how much energy I can put out there as much as possible to remind any motherfucker that's dealing with this shit, that's on the street, that the realities of a loss of life and any day being your last is in our face nowadays. It's right there at any fucking second. And that's why the message of hope, right? The message of hope that like,
forgiveness. I think one of the most meaningful things I've ever heard, my grandma told me this when I lost my mom, that she said, she said it almost kind of snide. She said, just remember, kid, you don't forgive them for them. You don't forgive people for them. And this is something that changed my life, that I remember, because it's important that we have this toolkit, that when we're in these moments of breakdown, that we remind ourselves how much of a survivor we are, how the forgiveness that you give to somebody. Because I've had to forgive. I've had to mourn people that were still alive. When you experience that, it's so. That part, just remember that because I know that a lot of some mental health stuff stems from unfinished business that you have towards somebody, where you feel maybe you're at a power dynamic where you don't have the strength on it, and so it just beats you down forever. And I just think it's important to remember that when you separate yourself from it and it's time to forgive, we got to forgive people for yourself, not for them. You do it for yourself. So,
bro, that's so powerful that you said that, man. Because your grandma was on point when she said that.
And I needed it. And the way she said it to me, I needed, because she was a smart ass in that moment, which she wasn't a smart ass. Like, she knew that she had to be to get through to me.
She was dropping a gem. She was dropping a gem on me.
She's like, and then dropped the mic. But
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
with that, well, Endr won. Shout out to Lomo, Loren Morrison. We're gonna miss you, man. And I'm gonna play a song, and it's a really sad one at the end, and it's really dark. But I wanted to play it. Rio handpicked it, and said that you got to play this. It's the heaviest and it's the hardest one, and I think it just nails it. His pain.
Sure.
So we're gonna play that.
I appreciate you having me, man. And at the end of the day, when we lose people, I just want to say this is that I feel like especially with a pain like this, where Lomo touched so many lives, so many different aspects, is we carry his name. We carry his name through things like this, and we carry his name in ways beyond what just we're talking about right here, beyond bigger than rap, bigger than hip hop. Like this is, it's on some other shit, because his effect and his outreach and his smile and his energy, was bigger than I could put words on, for sure. So I appreciate what you're doing for him right now.
I do want to say you are going to be doing a show August. What's the date?
August 11th, a week from tonight. Yep, 50-year anniversary.
Wow Hall.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, that's when you do your first Wow Hall show in Eugene, it's a big deal. This isn't your first by far, but like 50th. But I'm saying
Wow Hall in general, yeah. Anybody that knows Wow Hall in this town knows that that's kind of a legendary spot. And I wanted to do it all ages. I haven't got to do an all ages show in this town in a while. And so to be able to do it in my hometown, August 11th, 50-year anniversary, and it's my sobriety birthday that same day too. That's my 18 years sober. So
wow, that's all. You're old enough to make decisions at this point.
I'm an old fuck, man. Well, I don't know what to say, man.
That's all we ever have to do anyway. Endr One, I love you so much, man. Thank you so much for the work you do, and keep helping the community with your art, and just with your human being. So
I'm trying, man. I love you too, man.
You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly. Well, they say beauty's in the eyes of the beholder, but all I see is ugliness and lies. Getting older, advice from one shoulder, silence on the other. The devil's so strong and my angel taking flight. Dirty lines, dirty clues, dirty mind, dirty views, dirtier with time. I might as well just turn this. I'm a no good piece of shit, so worthless I reek of it. Ain't worth the time, let alone the rhyme to speak of it. I dig a ditch down deeper than your deepest pit. I wanna be alone. I kill myself after a week of it. I turn a view too many people away. I wonder so suddenly, damn, I'm feeling ugly today. Don't waste an embrace, I'm just a waste of space. What, try and smile and save face? Well, I'm lying if that's the case. Constant chase, living life like a rat in a race, waiting to die. How much longer will it take? You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly. I'm feeling ugly, kinda twisted, wonder why I exist. Every friend has come to fists, every woman leaves me pissed. It's why this rhyme is like a list, just to help you get the gist. It's just I built me up some walls and I tried to keep a distance. I'm a pessimist wrapped up in a big plastic smile. I rap about love, but I'm in active denial, acting wild. But my attitude like do or die. Friends saying suicide, it was a suicide. The phone rings, but I don't wanna answer it. I don't wanna hear, wanna feel, or even glance at it. In fact, my plan's for it to attach it to a brick, throw that bitch into the ocean, that's a permanent fix. Call me ugly, call me stupid, call me pathetic or hell, cause it ain't nothing I ain't already called myself. Don't pity old shitty me, even ugly above me. I'm sorry, slug, but God doesn't love me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly. You're so ugly to me. You're so ugly